Hi there, welcome back to your virtual studio. I'm Zuri and I'll be leading you through a prenatal sun salutation practice, all right? We will be using 2 blocks and a blanket. If you have pillows nearby or some knee cushions that you'd like to add in, please do so. The more pillows, especially for the end of practice, the better, all right? We're going to begin this practice standing today. We'll go through some of the movements that you will see in a sun salutation and very often in a vinyasa class. And so if you wanted to visit another vinyasa class, maybe an in-person class, and you're not so sure, how do I adjust the movement so that it's comfortable for baby and me? We'll go through some of those movements in this session today. So here is your very prenatal friendly sun salutation practice. Let's begin standing, and do set up your 2 blocks, just like I have, at the top of the mat. And then we'll get started. If there's anything you feel you need to do, maybe shrugging shoulders or doing any little movements, allow whatever you need to do to arrive. And maybe that's also bringing your attention to your breath. Your hands can stay wherever you'd like, or I'll invite you to place them around baby's home. Maybe one on baby's home and the other around your heart or chest. Just observe the movement of your breath here and the way that you share this breath with your baby. If there's an urge to sway side to side, allow that to happen. This might be a great place to stay. But I'll invite one more thing as we continue to sort of greet ourselves and our breath. And that's maybe to just open the eyes if they were closed and start to walk off of your mat and around your practice space or around your room. And just notice the natural sway of your hips. Notice perhaps, or you can visualize where you're carrying baby. And sometimes you can have an idea of where baby's head is or baby's butt is, depending on certain bits of pressure. You might know or have an idea from visiting the doctor, but you might also have your own sensations that can give you an idea of where baby is today. And so as you're walking, you're carrying baby, breathe to your baby. And start to make your way back to your mat. As we meet in a standing position, can the feet remain a bit wider than inner hip width distance? Oftentimes in Tadasana, we practice with the feet close together. Today I invite you to start creating space for baby and pelvis, and think about setting the feet a bit more outside hip width. And then start to tuck the tailbone a bit more. Let's start to ground into our mountain pose. When we tuck the tailbone, the pubic bone is lifting up. In order to feel the difference, you can relax the glutes and let the tailbone lift. Then point the tailbone down and lift. And it's a very tiny movement Try not to let this be a movement of your spine. It's not the chest or spine or the upper spine moving. It's just the very lowest segment of your spine, and that's just your pelvic bowl. Tailbone points down, pubic bone up, pubic bone forward, tailbone comes up. So we're giving baby a little boat ride. We're going to stay in the tucked position. The tailbone is tucked down, the pubic bone is pointing upward. So that's our posterior tilt. And we might notice that in order to hold that position, our large glute muscles, so we love our glutes, they're one of our bigger muscles, and they're nice and strong. So when we're getting ready to either create force or receive force, whether we're going to push something or lift something heavy, this is a great base position for the pelvis. It says, okay, I've got you, we're here, all these big muscles are engaged, we're stable, upper body, do what you want, right? So relax that sensation, maybe wiggle the butt a little bit, wiggle the legs, then find it again. Tuck the tail and keep it that way. In order to keep this position, glutes, that's their job, right? So the glutes are really engaged here. Relax the glutes one more time and then engage them again to point, right? We're doing this specifically to let the glutes do what they're designed to do, and that is to actively tilt the pelvis. But now we stabilize the pelvis. We're keeping it here, all right? You're still here, you're still with me. Now the next time that you lift your tail, bring your whole trunk with you just a little bit. And we're going to go about halfway or half of halfway. So that can be 90-ish degrees or less. Wherever you go, reverse the work. It depends on where you are with baby or how old, how big baby is. If baby's nice and small, you're probably able to hinge a little further forward. And if baby's getting bigger, it's probably a little bit more difficult to fold forward. And that's natural because that's just space. That's just biology. Good. So we're going to do that one more time. Come back to stand up. Maintain the tailbone pointed down and bring the left hand right at your side, the right arm forward and up. Try to keep the spine nice and still here. And just reach the armpit, the shoulder blade a little higher, maybe wiggle your fingers a little bit. Then reach so much that we can glide the left fingertips down just slightly, just a little, so that we get a little more opening into the right rib cage. Slight lateral bend for the upper spine. We're going to come back to center and do the same thing on the other side. Left arm travels forward and up slowly first. It's a slow introduction to our shoulder joint. We elevate the shoulder joint. We lift it up by the ear, and that's actually inviting some length and space through the tissue at the side of the trunk before we even take that slight side bend. Now let's go for that side bend. Your right hand glides down just a little. You can still hug that right hand or arm into the side bodies to avoid over tipping. We don't need to over tip as long as you feel nice and spacious through the upper right or left rib cage. And then come back to center. Good. Now let's lift both arms together, and instead of a side bend, we're doing a slight lift of the chest. So a slight upward back bend, but we keep it just at the upper back. Your tailbone is still pointed down. The arms come forward and down. The spine returns back to neutral. Feel free to shrug the shoulders a couple of times here. Come back to your organic breath. And back to stillness. Reroute into your mountain pose, sending energy through your feet. Maybe now thinking of tucking the chin a bit more to create more length through the crown of the head and create even more length through each vertebra in your spine. I'll invite you to bring your fingers, any hand, left or right, to the bottom of the breastbone, to the bottom of the sternum here. And then your other hand around your belly, around baby's home. Now, the hand that's over baby's home is going to stay nice and still, but the hand that's by your sternum, we're going to draw the sternum in a little bit. And it's just creating us to, or it's causing us to round only our upper spine, and then send your sternum forward. So your lower spine, which is a little bit closer to where baby is, isn't really moving, it's staying still, but we are sending the rib cage and the upper spine into a forward and back movement. Last one. As you round your spine, stay there and start to bring your arms out as if to hold an imaginary ball. You can tuck the chin a bit more. You can send your pelvis back a bit more. You can wiggle side to side if that brings a release to your lower back. Then start to drop the ball as you find bent elbows and a little squeeze of your shoulder blades hugging together. Chest opens up. Round your spine. Draw that sternum right back in. Send the sternum forward again as you bring your cactus arms and squeeze the shoulder blades together. One more time. A little movement for the upper spine. Good. The next time you round, let your arms relax. Let yourself readjust, shrug, shake, release, however you need. Coming back to your mountain pose. Bringing the attention now to the lower body. We're going to bend the knees here and just the knees. It's a very little movement. And then we just lengthen the knees again. We're going to bend the knees. I'm going to lift my pants a little bit here so you can see that we're focusing on our ankle flexion now. As our knees are coming forward, maybe you take a pause this time and maybe do a little bounce or shift your weight side to side. So you're starting to introduce your ankles to this movement, the tissue behind the back of your ankle, your calves as well. And we're also getting to the stuff around the shin bones. We can feel that in the front of the legs perhaps. Then straighten the legs again. So we're moving next into a forward fold, which is where our blocks begin to come in. Think next, right? So we're going to keep the hands at our hips and we're going to tuck the tail. But when you lift the tail now, bring your whole trunk with it. So your spine is attached now to your tail. You lift the tail and we're going to bend the knees if we need to then bring our hands to the blocks. And depending on the space that baby's giving you, you might need to widen your feet as wide as your mat. Maybe a little wider depending on the space that baby's giving you here. In this position, we still have our spine nice and long. Let's tuck the tail round the spine, cat pose. Lift the tail, extend just a little bit forward, not a big back bend. And then one more time. So a different angle, a different perspective for the spine and for your pelvis. Come back to a neutral spine. Bend your knees even more. Drop the pelvis so that you can push the ground away with your legs and sweep the arms up. Point the tail as you lift the heart, meeting the hands overhead, and allow the hands to come back through center. Take a nice breath as you release the hands back down to the sides. Now we're going to tie those movements together through our first half sun salutation, which we want to do with wide legs, all right? Especially as baby's getting bigger, taking up more space, the wider the legs will be. So I'm going to practice today in a wide leg position. Tailbone points down. We still maintain the energy of mountain pose. So let's connect to that deeply rooted mountain pose for 2 breaths. The next breath, tailbone stays pointed down, but the arms sweep up to find a slight upward back bend. Start to bend the knees. As you hinge, tilt the pelvis forward with your spine, hands to your blocks. Bend the knees. Lengthen the knees. Bend the knees again. This time to help push the ground away. You might take a big exhale to help you create that action. All right, follow your breath pattern here as long as we're not holding the breath. Good, let's do this again. Sweep the arms up, enjoy a nice breath in. Good, fold over the legs, maybe emptying the breath, but mindful that you might have to take another breath in. Bend the knees and then lengthen. Rebend, take a nice breath. As you exhale, push the ground away through the legs, then sweep the arms right back up. Let's do that one more time, this time at your own pace, your own flow. Trust breath and body. We'll meet in a standing position. Take a breath. Sweep the arms up once more. Half sun salutation. We're going to fold over the legs, finding the blocks, bend the knees. From that half sun salutation, we're going to add a new layer. Step the left foot forward, maybe to the outside of your left block, and help the right foot travel back into this forward-facing lunge variation. Start next to take the right knee onto the floor. The left foot does not have to be directly in front of you. You can give yourself some space by having the foot travel off to the side a bit. And then stack your shoulders over your pelvis in what I call a stacked low lunge, right? Pelvis is stacked over the right knee. Hands to your hips here. Blocks can stay as they are, somewhere to the inside. And we're going to start to circle the hips around. So if we began with the tailbone pointed down, we're going to then lift the tail to the side, lift it back, point, forward, and just continue to draw some circles. This way we're getting into the little joints that connect to create our pelvic bowl. It's not one solid bone. We've got all these little bones together creating the pelvis, and that little bit of laxity that they have, that's what we're working on right now. Allowing the pelvis to really adjust to the movement that it has, the capacity of movement it has. And then find a little stillness. Here you go. You mobilized your whole pelvis. Let's find stillness, but in that ready for energy position. And that's going to be tailbone tucked, pubic bone up. Activate your left foot now as if you were stepping firmly down, and then pretend to slide your left heel back. At the same time, your right heel might feel like, or your right knee might feel like it's sliding forward. So you're wanting to bring them together, although they're not actually moving, but your muscles are active. Let's start to then bring the arms up by the ears again. Now, the left foot is isometrically, that means it's working, but it's not moving. It wants to drag back. Drag the foot and allow that to be the reason your pelvis moves forward a bit, and then push so that your pelvis moves back and your arms come down. Pull yourself forward, arms up just a little bit, and then right back. Right? If you have the space, right? Maybe baby is not taking up a lot of space. Your foot can be a little bit more directly in front of you, and you might have more space to bring yourself through this Anjaneyasana flow. Right? Otherwise, keep the foot nice and away through this forward and back movement. Make sure your right knee is cushioned, right? My knee is fine. I've got a carpet underneath my mat. Do you have a cushion or a blanket? Let's bring the hands back to the blocks. Switch sides. Left knee comes in. Invite the right foot forward. Say hello to the lunge on this side. Bring shoulders over the pelvis. Decide where your foot needs to be, right? My foot is all the way to the side of the mat, right? It could be forward, but if baby's taking space, we leave the foot out to the side. We can start with the tailbone pointed to identify our sort of base position, and then start to dance in a couple of circles. So that from here, it's just the pelvis moving again. You might imagine the tailbone like a pencil drawing a circle on your mat. Go in both directions. Another great thing about these hip circles, oh yeah, this is going to allow baby to familiarize itself with the dimensions of your pelvis in order to navigate it, in order to find the best ways to get down where it needs to be at the end of your pregnancy. So hip circles are baby's best friends, baby and pelvis's best friend. Let's find stillness again here with the tailbone tucked. Start to then draw the arms up and over by the head. Engage energy through your right foot now, stomping downward, and imagine that you're sliding that right foot back. Now, instead of imagining, actually pull yourself slightly forward. And as you push back, let the arms sweep back and forth, just a little bit here. Notice your breath pattern. This movement might be faster than a full breath in. So there's no particular in or out as long as you're not holding the breath. And if you're doing something that causes you to shorten your breath drastically, stop and re-engage that movement gently in a way where your breath can still flow. Good. Let's get ready to finish out here and bring the hands back onto the blocks. Heel toe the right foot back and bring your hands onto the floor for tabletop position. Start to tuck the tail, rounding the upper back, hugging baby up and in. Lift the tail for cow pose. Again, we move through a slight extension and round. Good. Just about 2 more here. Remember not to overextend, but your spine still needs movement. So overextending is just not creating this deeply exaggerated back bend. Trust that your spine still needs to move through flexion and extension nonetheless. Good. Find a little stillness here. And if you want to explore downward dog, we'll go there in a moment, but downward dog doesn't always feel comfortable after a certain stage in pregnancy, not for everyone. So what we're going to do here is send the hands forward from your tabletop. Let your knees stay where they are. You might bring one block somewhere around where the forehead would be, so that as you draw your pelvis back and your forehead starts to lower, you rest the forehead on the block and receive the lengthening stretch through the side of the trunk that we would receive in downward dog. The tailbone can stay lifted, pointed upwards, not to exaggerate a lumbar curve, but simply to create length through the lower back. So more of a neutral spine, less of a back bend here. You're welcome to stay or shift towards a downward dog position. And in downward dog, when we're carrying baby, wide legs still apply. So I'm going to slightly internally rotate my thighs, tuck my toes, and send the pelvis up with knees or legs nice and wide here. Good. Feel free to find movement. I'm swaying my hips side to side. You're welcome to pedal your knees here if you're in downward dog. You might even shift through a bit of a sort of like a quick plank, letting the pelvis point down as you shift forward. And slowly you can move through that slight plank to help bring the knees down. If you're in tabletop, if you're in puppy pose, simply come back to a seated position. Perhaps the heels or the sits bones sit over the heels. Feel free to shrug shoulders if you need. Move the wrist around, whatever organic movement is connecting with you right now. And maybe settle back to stillness, to reconnect with breath, to reconnect with baby. Baby might be sleeping, or baby might be having a dance party inside. Let's take one more breath here. Begin to let the light back in if the eyes closed, and come back to tabletop with your blocks at their tallest setting. Good. From here, we're going to step any foot forward, your favorite foot forward, just so that you can stand up, bringing the back foot forward. And we are in a forward fold again, a half forward fold, because our spine is nice and long. Hands are supported onto the blocks. Let's take a nice breath in. Make sure the feet are wide as you bend the knees. One more breath in. As you exhale, push the ground away. Lift the arms up, bringing the hands back to heart center. Full breath, and let it go. Let's complete one more sun salutation variation from top to bottom. Take a breath in, sweep the arms up. Let the heart lift just a bit as the tailbone stays rooted. As you lift the tailbone, bring the trunk with you, hands to your blocks, bend your knees, allow them to lengthen any degree. Bend them again, this time to step the left foot forward and the right foot back. The right knee comes down, untuck the right toes, shift the torso so that trunk stacks over the pelvis, and then let the arms sweep up and over. A V-shape variation, if you will. Grab a nice grip of your left foot and maybe pull the pelvis slightly forward for your Anjaneyasana variation. Push the pelvis back, hands to the blocks. Heel toe, left foot back, right foot forward. Shift the trunk, shoulders over the pelvis. Sweep the arms up into a V shape, so a little bit wider than the shoulders. Engage the right foot. Begin to pull forward any degree. Right? Mindful of the space you're sharing with baby, so strong legs, squeezing the legs here for stability. Beautiful. Pushing back, pelvis back, hands to the blocks. Tuck the left toes. Take a nice breath in. As you exhale, lift the left knee off of the mat. Start to then walk the blocks slightly forward, shifting the weight and stepping forward back to a forward fold. Bend the knees. Take a breath in. As you exhale, stand, sweeping the arms up. Hands back to the heart. Full breath. And let it go. Pausing here in your mountain pose. Hands can stay at your side, or you might hold on to baby. You might even sway. Notice your beating heart, how your energy dances inside based on this power that you've manifested through this physical flow. And this energy that you've manifested, you get to share it with baby. Let's find a little stillness, releasing the hands down by your sides, back to mountain pose. Let's make our way back down to the ground. Sweep the arms up. Bend the knees as you hinge forward, hands to the blocks. Step the right foot back. Bring the blocks with you so that as you bring the right knee down, you can start to heel toe or shift the left knee back to tabletop position. From this tabletop, cat-cow might feel appropriate, but I think another appropriate thing is these hip circles, letting your spine start to get more into sideways, lateral movement. And even from this sideways and lateral movement, you can still go back to some regular cat and cows because those are always yummy. Good. As you start to come back to center to a tabletop position, let's actually readjust the legs so that the big toes are together and the knees are wide into sort of this diamond shape that we're creating in the legs. But now our hands are going to travel slightly forward, just a little bit, not too much. So we've created this distance between our hands and knees, but the shoulders, they can shift forward over the wrist, the tailbone points down. As we navigate this shape, we've morphed our tabletop into a plank variation. Bring the pelvis back. And as you shift the pelvis back over the wrist, because you move them forward, the tailbone can point down, pubic bone is pointing up as we shift the trunk forward and back. And this is a little bit of your plank flow. You can turn this into a spinal flow by tucking the tail, rounding the spine a bit when the pelvis is back. And use the grip to float through cat pose and then forward into a little cow. All right, so maybe there's a spinal wave, maybe it's just pelvis forward and back. If you got enough of that movement, start to shift the pelvis to rest onto the heels. Sometimes that's not comfortable and we might want to add a block or a pillow, perhaps a rolled blanket between the sits bones and the heels. And our other block at any setting, we'll use it to support the head here. Arms can be wherever they need. And if this isn't comfortable, you can choose an upright position, just a regular kneeling, or you might just have the space to let your forehead be on the mat. Don't be afraid to explore, to experiment, and to also acknowledge that today one shape might feel really good, and tomorrow it might feel totally different. Bring your attention back to your breath. Observe this beautiful exchange of breath between you and baby. This beautiful exchange of love and energy, of light and growth for both you and baby. Begin to deepen the breath. Lengthen the arms as you walk the shoulders back. Remove any props from beneath the sits bones and invite your sits bones back onto your mat, shifting yourself towards the center of the mat, preparing for our prenatal shavasana. And for our prenatal shavasana, I'm going to steal this pillow here from my chair. If you happen to have those extra pillows, bring them nearby and I'll tell you why. I'm going to use my blanket as a pillow, just because I don't have another one right now. They're there, but I'll leave those there. This will be my pillow, and it's actually going to be the blocks that are going to go between the knees. And so one block at the knee, I'm going to set it right there. Might wobble, we might need some adjustments. This is a trial and error. And the other block is going to be over the ankle a bit more. Then I'm going to slowly support myself onto the ground. I'm going to sandwich these blocks with my top leg. I'm going to slide my left arm under. You might be on whichever side is comfortable today. That could be left, that could be right. And the pillow is actually going to be to tuck over the top armpit. This will help support your trunk in a more neutral position rather than rounding your shoulders forward. So take this even as something to do at night. If you sleep in a sideways position at night and you're waking up with achy back pain or shoulder pain from sleeping like this with your upper back rounded forward, tuck a little pillow or a rolled blanket under the armpit and see if that works. For now, just get cozy, adjust as you need, and then bring your attention to your breath. Allow this to be a moment for body and mind to digest this practice, the energy that you've manifested, and a way to slowly deepen the relationship between you and baby. Continue to observe your breath. Notice how it moves like a song, singing to baby, or even singing to yourself. Invite a deeper breath in, and with it notice what parts of your body organically respond, what wants to move first. Maybe it's some ankle movement, that top leg might find some movement. We're going to gently remove these blocks or tools out of the way. And we're going to gently use our top arm. We're not going to rush through this. We'll use our top arm to help gently push us away from the ground. As we make our way into a final upright seat, where we can simply seal our practice together, sharing a few breaths for us and for baby. Hands can be wherever they need, maybe around lap or baby. And the eyes can soften and close again, coming back to your energy now. If there is a reminder, an intention, or perhaps just an expression of gratitude, something that can help you take this mindfulness practice beyond this physical practice. So whatever connects with you, place that into your heart and mind space. Be it something for you or for baby, or both. Your hands can stay as they are, or they might connect at heart center in Anjali Mudra. From here, 3 breaths to seal our practice. A breath in through the nose, a cleansing breath out through nose or mouth, full breath in, and let it go. Final breath. As you exhale, bow to your space and practice. Recognize the power that is within your breath. It is with you wherever you are. May you also recognize yourself as your own best teacher. Thank you for sharing your space and energy with me. Be well.